Java. So we have here these C++ and Java comments, and statements are separated by a semicolon, which is very nice, except actually, or anecdotically, that you can omit the semicolon in JavaScript. I explained that yesterday, that JavaScript was invented at the time when Netscape, where it was invented, competed directly with Microsoft, and Microsoft had this Visual Basic Script, and in Visual Basic Script, statements are terminated by the new line. So in order to, I don't know, my interpretation is that in order to tease people who are used to Visual Basic Script to use JavaScript as well, they built in this possibility to omit the semicolon at the end of the line or at the end of the statement if it coincides with the end of the line. That creates endless hassle and is not a good idea, but it's still in the language. So much for that. The differences are mostly in semantics. So while it looks syntactically much like Java or like C++, it is semantically quite different. And the most notable difference is that it has a top-level flow of control. That's what I pointed out. So when JavaScript is being read, that is embedded in an HTML page, it is executed while it is being read, completely in difference to C++ or Java, where there is no top-level flow of control. So we have an arbitrary entrance point of a flow of control, which is the main function in C++, or the main method, which is a static method in Java. But there is no flow of control going on in the source code that's being written. So, and in that respect, JavaScript is, of course, very much like other scripting languages, like Perl, Python, and shell scripts, and so on. And I also mentioned that it is usually embedded in other types of documents. In this case, notably in HTML. But I still want to point out that actually other document types have document object models as well. And they very often also happen to use JavaScript as their scripting language. So for instance, PDF has a document object model and can embed JavaScript, and Shockwave can embed JavaScript where it is called ActionScript, and so on. Anyway, in this case, it is HTML in which this JavaScript is embedded. And that actually creates, funnily, all kinds of conflicts because HTML has a very strict syntax, which is different from the JavaScript syntax, and it is possible to write JavaScript text down that it is illegal to be contained in HTML. So for instance, these angle brackets or so, which are less than and greater than operators in Java, are not allowed in HTML text, actually. Yet JavaScript appears where normally text appears, so and that creates conflicts which are very tedious and cumbersome, actually, to work around. Other things that we have not yet seen, but will see shortly, are so-called prototypes. So I just talked about creating classes or creating objects and instantiating classes. However, it turns out that there's actually no such thing as classes in JavaScript. And the alternative is called delegation and prototypes. So we delegate method invocations to prototype objects, which are just objects, and these prototype objects act like classes, which is very interesting and very nifty. So I'll get to that shortly. I also mentioned closures and dynamic functions, and well, as in scripting languages, as usual in scripting languages, we have an eval operator, which is also very useful. Back to this embedding of JavaScript in HTML. So I just want to demonstrate where else in HTML JavaScript can be embedded. So first of all, well, we have seen two occasions actually in the first example, so that where files that are referred to by the source attribute of the script element. So that was the first thing that we have seen, this JavaScript library that we include from the Google host. So that's JavaScript that is in an external file that is loaded using the source attribute. So then JavaScript can be contained in the content of the script element that we also have seen. That was basically the script fragment that we have seen. And the next thing I'm going to demonstrate you in a next example. This is again a Google map as we've seen it here. But now we have these two links here, down here on the page, which say zoom out, zoom in. And if I click those, then I can zoom out or zoom in. And I'm going to show you how I achieved that in the source code. Okay, and here are actually two differences from the example that we have seen before. The first difference is that now we are defining a function that contains all our initialization code for this map. So when I explained that this code that is contained in the script element is executed while it is being read. And yesterday, if you have heard this talk about Ajax, I explained that this is actually a wrong thing to do. Because what we are doing there is we access the document object model of this document while it is not yet complete. And this is actually undefined, and you're very lucky if you do this and it works. And in fact, if you, for instance, if we would have done this inside a table in Internet Explorer, it wouldn't have worked. And Internet Explorer wouldn't have told us what's wrong, only that it doesn't work. So in general, it is actually completely undefined what happens if you access the document object model of a document that is not yet read. And therefore, it is better to actually wait until the document is completely read. And the way to achieve that is using this onload event. In general, whatever happens in an interactive application happens as reaction to events. So if you have a graphical or a user interface application or an application with a user interface, then everything that happens in this application basically happens as reaction to an event that is created by the framework using which this application is written. And one of these events that also occur in HTML, so because the HTML document is, so to speak, the framework of our application, one of these events is load, or the load event. And this event is fired or occurs, the lingo for that is it is fired, when the document is completely loaded. So, and what happens now in the script element is that we merely define a function. So, and the script is still executed while it is being read, but what is executed is this function definition. So we have now this function load map, and that does exactly what the script did before directly. So, and this just defines a function. So now we have here this other place. So I'm still talking about places in HTML where JavaScript is embedded, remember? And here's this place, an onload, or an attribute of the body element called onload, and that is defined to contain JavaScript text that is evaluated when this load event is fired. So, and this is just a function call. So the function is called loadmap, and it is invoked using this call operator. So, and what happens now is that this function over there is called when a document is completely being loaded. That is, we can really meaningfully access the entire document object model of this document. Okay, so that's the third place where JavaScript can occur in HTML. A fourth place is so-called JavaScript URLs, which you see here. And that's actually also a very cumbersome idea when JavaScript was invented. Somehow people wanted to execute JavaScript when they click links. So, and a very straightforward and brute force kind of way of achieving this was to define JavaScript as a protocol for URLs. So you know that URLs start with something before a colon, something like HTTP, for instance, or FTP, or mail to, or whatever, and they just defined JavaScript, colon, as a protocol for, or to be used in URLs. And what this means is that whatever follows the colon is a JavaScript expression that is executed in the context of the document that contains this link, but no navigation takes actually place. So this just executes this JavaScript statement. So, and what happens here is if I click on one of these links, then I call the method zoom2 on this object map, and I pass a value to this method that is actually a zoom level, which we have seen before, and this method happens to have another, or this object happens to have another method that gets the current zoom level, or that gets back the current zoom level. So, and what I just do is I zoom to one zoom level up or one zoom level below. So that's zoom out, that's zoom in, so one level more or less. The thing is that these JavaScript expressions are executed in the global context. So that is, yeah, they are executed not inside a function or something, but in the global context of this document, or in the global scope of this document. And now in order to call methods on my map object, I have to retain a reference or to obtain a reference to this map object so that I can call methods on it. And if you look up there, this is what I've done there. So I have this global, I've declared this global variable map and initialized it to null, which is just nothing. And when my onload handler was called, this load map function, at this point, I changed the value of this map object to my newly created map object. So and this actually also makes this code wrong in a certain sense. Namely, if I click on this link before the document is fully loaded, then this expression evaluates or doesn't evaluate because I try to invoke a method on null, which doesn't work because there is no such method yet. Yeah, question.
I have a short question on this onload function. Because I had tested it, I had some strange difficulties with different content types of the HTML file. When I set it to HTML 3 something, it was executed, and when I changed the content type to HTML, the onload function wasn't executed. Mm-hmm. And Firefox and Internet Explorer, is there something?
No, nothing that comes to mind immediately. You just have to investigate that. But that's just the spirit of programming JavaScript. Yeah. Okay, so much for that. To conclude, okay, I mentioned these 4 places basically where JavaScript can occur in HTML. And just to complete that, JavaScript URLs can really occur wherever URLs can occur. So, and that is meaningfully, of course, only in the href attribute of an A element or in the submit attribute of a form element. However, at least also the img element has an attribute that has a value that is a URL, which is the source attribute. And at least in Internet Explorer, if you put a JavaScript URL in the source attribute of an img element, then this JavaScript is executed, which is not meaningfully at all. So it's really a bug, but that happens. And a 5th place where JavaScript can occur in HTML and related documents are CSS behaviors, but only in Internet Explorer. Yet behaviors are actually a nifty concept, and that's why I mentioned them here. So if you like to read into that, that will be very nice. And next thing, you've seen already how we've defined functions. And I just mentioned that this way of invoking functions in a JavaScript URL that is just put into this link is actually wrong because it doesn't always work. So if I click the link too early, then my JavaScript breaks. So now I have an example where I corrected this. And by the way, I got rid of this global variable, which is also not very nice to have, actually. So you should all know that global variables are evil, and you should have pointed out that to me earlier. So now, let me explain what happens here. We've seen already this load event that is fired on the body element in HTML. Now I'm going to use another event, which is the click event. And what I'm doing now to install my zoom out, zoom in functionality on these 2 links, instead of putting a JavaScript expression into the href attribute, instead I put them into the click handler. That is, if I click on something on a page, a click event is generated. And I can install a JavaScript function or JavaScript expression to be called whenever this click event occurs. So, and that's what I'm doing here, but I'm not doing this in the HTML text as I did it with the onload handler, but instead I'm doing this in JavaScript. So, and that's what happens in these 2 new sections in the JavaScript code. Let me explain what happens. So I first get a reference to one of these link elements. So again, I call get element by